At my brother's engagement dinner, his fiancée stared at me and said, "Wait, you're the founder of Next Tech?" The room froze. Turns out, her company was about to acquire mine for $235 million. My family thought I worked in IT. They had no idea. Sometimes the best revenge is quiet and worth 9 figures. I'm 32-year-old Lyra Solon, and I've been quietly developing my IT business for the past 5 years while my family thought I was squandering my talent. My brother's fiancée just acknowledged me as the creator of the software that her company purchased for millions of dollars during his engagement dinner tonight. Every holiday dinner where my parents compared me to their expectations was worth it for the expression on their cheeks when she murmured, "Wait, you're the founder of Next Tech?" The jaw of my brother remains on the ground. Please hit like and subscribe below if you're seeing this from a place where your dreams are disregarded. There were expectations associated with growing up in Highland Park, a lovely neighborhood north of Chicago. In addition to being a surgeon, my father, Richard Mitchell, was the surgeon that other medical professionals turned to when situations got complex. Maris, my mother, was a business lawyer who never lost a case and controlled courtrooms. My brother Kalen, who was 4 years older and the ideal firstborn, flawlessly followed our father's career route into medicine. Although it was tiny, our house was lovely. The purpose of the dinner table was to share accomplishments, not merely to eat. "So, what did everyone accomplish today?" Mom would ask at the beginning of most evenings. Perfect test scores, scientific fair triumphs, and volunteer work at esteemed hospitals were just a few of Kalen's many amazing accomplishments. My responses were never quite up to par when it was my turn. For fun, I created a web page. I once said at the age of 15 that I was quite proud of myself for learning HTML and CSS in a single weekend. Mom said, "That's nice, honey," with that special smile that stopped short of her eyes. But shouldn't you be focusing on your debate team preparation? Colleges look for sustained commitments, not hobbies. With a nod, Dad would turn to inquire about Kalen's advanced biology research. Computers were toys, and that much was obvious. Courtrooms and operating rooms were the sites of true accomplishment. My bedroom turned into a haven where I could explore tech forums and programming languages without fear of criticism. Kalen's walls were covered in framed academic trophies, whereas mine were covered in code printouts and app interface designs. Right up until 2 in the morning. The following day, I dragged myself through chemistry class after learning Python and JavaScript. Unless it affected my academics, my parents didn't realize how tired I was. I created a program at the age of 16 that assisted in planning the large yearly fundraising for my school. My software slashed their planning time in half, which astounded Mrs. Winters, the event coordinator. When she told my parents at a school function, "Your daughter has a remarkable talent." "Oh, Lyra has many interests," Mom said tactfully. "But we're focusing on getting her law school prerequisites in order." Even though I had no intention of applying to law school, they had already made up their minds about my future. One of the pivotal moments in my junior year was the regional coding competition. I qualified for the finals with an inventory management system I had constructed after months of preparation. Kalen's celebration of being accepted to medical school coincided with the competition. Mom said, "We're so sorry, sweetie," without being very apologetic. "But your brother's worked his entire life for this. You understand, right? Maybe next time." I was the only competitor. First place went to the sole student without family assistance. Professional software developers who served as judges told me I had innate talent and vision that was beyond my years. When I returned home with my prize in hand, our home was crowded with family members honoring Kalen. Dad said, "That's wonderful, dear," in appreciation of my accomplishment before he resumed toasting my brother. That evening, I decided something. I would be successful on my own terms, independent of their approval. I would create something that would compel them to see me, something they couldn't ignore or downplay. College applications and family pressure to apply to Ivy League universities with robust pre-law programs arrived in the senior year. Rather, I submitted applications to state colleges with top-notch departments of computer science. My parents responded as though I had declared my intention to join the circus when I received my acceptance to Illinois Tech, along with a substantial merit scholarship. "You're throwing away your potential," Dad remarked, his disappointment in every word. "Your test scores could get you into Yale Computer Science," Mom said, raising her voice. "That's not a field for someone of your capabilities." They intended to say, "That field isn't deserving of a Mitchell." Kalen attempted to mediate in his well-intentioned but patronizing manner after returning home from his first year of medical school. "Maybe it's just a phase, Mom. Let her get it out of her system before law school." My parents' expectations weighed heavily on me as I departed for college that fall, but I also felt lighter than I had ever felt before. I could finally do what I loved without worrying about being judged all the time. I saw what my family referred to as failure as the beginning of my own journey. College was a liberating experience. I wasn't the daughter at Illinois Tech wasting her potential playing video games. I was Lyra, the student professor who was chosen by the instructors for her creative solutions to programming problems. I was surrounded by people who understood me and appreciated my abilities for the first time. Kaya Lyrian and I met in our advanced programming class during my sophomore year. Kaya and I completed the final project in half the allotted time, and we added extra features just for fun, whereas most students found it difficult. We began going out for coffee after class and continued to discuss technology and its unrealized promise until the campus cafe closed. The healthcare system is broken, Kaya declared one evening while reading an article about medical communication breakdowns on her laptop. Her mother finally received appropriate therapy for lupus after 3 false diagnoses. Doctors can perform miracles, but they can't communicate with each other or their patients effectively. Something was ignited by the conversation. We drew sketches on napkins and whiteboards throughout the course of the following week, imagining a platform that would transform the exchange of medical information between patients and physicians. We had the basic framework for next at the conclusion of the semester. Going home for summer break meant that nothing had changed. During family get-togethers, Kaylin's medical residency was the first question posed by family members. When I was changing to a legitimate major, they asked me the first question. In an attempt to advance the conversation, I began to provide evasive responses about studying technology. When my uncle said, "Computer stuff is getting popular," he would gesture dismissively. "I'm sure you can find some entry-level job when you graduate. Maybe IT support." They were unaware that Kaya and I were constructing our prototype whenever we had free time. Her parents kindly made room for us to work in their garage in Chicago. Her family inquired about our development while bringing us meals. It couldn't have been more different from my own family. We developed a functional beta version by the time we were juniors. We participated in entrepreneurial contests and won enough cash to establish our company and submit patent applications. We were introduced by a professor to Dr. Harriet Chen, a disgruntled hospital administrator who served as our first advisor and, ultimately, our first paying customer. Dr. Chen said this could transform patient outcomes after viewing our demonstration. "How soon can we implement a pilot program?" My father, meanwhile, cornered me near the dessert table over Thanksgiving dinner my senior year. He replied, "Maris and I have been talking," using my mother's name in the manner that typically denoted a united front between parents. "We're concerned about your job prospects. Kaylin can help you get an administrative position at his hospital. Something stable while you figure things out." I inhaled deeply. "Actually, I'm working on starting a business." He laughed incredulously, not cruelly. "A business? Lyra, be serious. You need experience before you can think about entrepreneurship. Get a real job first." I didn't try to tell my family about my work life again after that. Having something I put my heart into regarded as a childish fantasy hurt too much. After graduating, Kaya and I moved into a small apartment in the South Loop of Chicago. We took on side jobs designing websites to pay the rent, lived off of coffee and ramen, and coded till our eyes burned. We could hardly afford a corner desk at a co-working facility for our initial workplace. Nextech gained popularity gradually. We were able to hire Tyler, a talented developer, as our first employee thanks to a tiny angel investment from one of the judges of our competition. A regional medical center and a network of outpatient clinics both awarded us contracts. The talks were perfunctory when I called home. When asked, "Work is fine," I would respond. They assumed that I was making ends meet in some sort of entry-level tech support position, so they never asked for specifics. Kaylin told a pharmaceutical salesperson he was engaged at Christmas that year. As family members inquired about the wedding plans, my dad grinned proudly. My mother later discovered me by myself in the kitchen. "You know Lyra," she refilled her glass of wine. "Kaylin's friend Mark is single. He's finishing his residency in neurology. I could arrange an introduction." The underlying message was unmistakable. If I couldn't succeed myself, at least I could marry someone who could. My family was blind to the exponential growth in our user base. Hospitals are claiming better patient satisfaction and fewer mishaps. Medical journals are starting to realize the influence of our platform. Kaya said, "We need to talk about scaling," as she distributed invitations to investor meetings around our desk one morning. "We can't keep up with demand. Nextech employed 30 people and had raised $10 million in venture financing by the time I was 26. I was finally able to pay off my student loans and had moved into a small but lovely apartment with a view of Lake Michigan. Nevertheless, I drove my old college car and dressed simply when I went to see my parents, which helped them to keep up their story about my struggle. It was no longer only about disproving them. It was about defending something valuable against those who had never appreciated it. I didn't want achievement on my terms to prove that my path was legitimate. The cognitive dissonance increased as the gap between my two worlds widened. In another reality, I was a budding IT entrepreneur who was starting to get noticed by trade journals. I was the daughter who had fallen short of her promise in the other. On a Tuesday morning in April, Memorial Health System sent the email. I called Kaya into my office after reading it 3 times. They want to implement Next across their entire network, I added, scarcely raising my voice above a whisper. 27 hospitals in 3 states. Kaya fell onto my desk chair across from me. That's the largest healthcare provider in the Midwest, she explained. I gave a nod. We'd been building toward this moment for years. But actually reaching it felt surreal. The contract would make us a big participant in the health tech industry and tenfold increase our revenue. In a matter of hours, we received inquiries from other hospital systems who wanted to know what Memorial had noticed about us. Our first purchase offer of $33 million from a larger tech business came the following month. In a modern conference room, Kaya and I listened to business leaders twice our age justify why we ought to accept their offer of employment. Kaya said, "It's a generous offer," as we made our way back to our office. "It is," I concurred. "And we're turning it down." Nextech was more valuable than money, as we both realized. It was about creating something that mattered, something that truly benefited people. We weren't prepared to relinquish authority. 2 weeks later, our company was valued at over $110 million by the venture capital firm Sierra Partners, who offered $33 million for a minority investment. We agreed this time. We would be able to grow without losing our vision thanks to the investment. I asked that only my first name be used when the press release was sent out. The article said, Lyra, co-founder and CEO, typically with a picture of Kaya next to a silhouette that had my name in the description. It has nothing to do with concealment. That's right. It was about mastering my story. After I purposefully kept a low profile at an industry convention, Kaya said, "Don't you want recognition? You've earned it." "I do," I said. "Just not yet. And not from strangers." Even Kaya was unable to explain my complex connection with validation. I wanted to see my relatives. See me, really? However, after my achievement became indisputable, I wasn't sure I could stand it when others minimized it or took credit for it. I had to have this all to myself before I shared it. In addition, there was a certain strength to establishing an empire without a word. I was starting to be referred to in tech circles as the ghost founder, the smart but camera-shy lady who created Nextech's groundbreaking platform. My reputation was only improved by the mystery. Next was the TechWorld magazine profile. They requested pictures of both founders, but I fought for simply Kaya's unobstructed portrait and a picture of me from behind, overlooking our expanding office. Just the way I intended it, the story highlighted our leadership and inventiveness without going into my background. On paper, I was a multi-millionaire at the age of 28. I purchased a chic condo in the heart of Chicago, but I kept everything simple and modest. I loosely described my flat to family members as a tiny space with roommates when they inquired about it, giving them the impression that I was still having difficulties. I still only had a small circle of trust. Of course, Kaya knew everything. After arranging too many invitations to Mitchell family occasions that were turned down, my assistant Suri was able to comprehend the family predicament. Additionally, Dr. Elin, my therapist, assisted me in processing the mixed feelings of success that go unacknowledged. During one session, Dr. Elin remarked, "What are you waiting for? What would make it the right time to tell them?" I gave the question careful thought. I want it to be so undeniable that they can't explain it away. So big they can't take credit for it or tell me I just got lucky. And I want to be completely at peace with never getting their approval. So if they still don't give it, I'll be okay. Dr. Elin gave a contemplative nod. "And are you working toward that peace?" "Every day," I responded. I was too. In addition to developing cutting-edge technology, building Nextech meant developing myself independently of the norms that had shaped my early years. I was aware of the irony that my brother had pursued a career in medicine after our father. But I was the one who brought about the healthcare revolution. Currently, more than 200 healthcare facilities around the country were using Next. According to studies, Nextech increased patient satisfaction ratings by 38% and decreased communication errors by 43%. I would retrieve our company's valuation and user statistics every several months, generally following a family get-together where I had been discreetly pitted. Not out of conceit, but as a reminder that value wasn't determined by approval from others. When old fears started to reappear, the figures helped me stay grounded. Then the gossip started. One of the biggest providers of health software in the nation, Horizon Health Technologies, was expressing interest. More of a temperature check than a proposal, their early outreach was cautious. After rejecting multiple offers, they wanted to know whether we would consider one more. Kaya stated following an exploratory lunch with their development director, they're talking $220 million minimum. 100 millions. Someone who would garner media attention. Even my achievement-driven family cannot ignore such a figure. A part of me questioned, is now the time? Will I eventually emerge from the shadows at this point? Another part, however, paused. Was I truly prepared for the collision of my worlds? How would it feel to be suddenly noticed, really noticed, by those who have been ignoring me all my life? I was pressed for time to make a decision. My hand was going to be forced, in the most surprising way, by life. I was looking over quarterly predictions on a Sunday afternoon when my mother called. Lyra, wonderful news, she said without introducing herself. Kaylin and Saren have set a date. Labor Day weekend. They're planning an engagement dinner next month at Bluebird. You'll need to clear your calendar. Bluebird, the newest restaurant in Chicago to receive a Michelin star. Without connections or a 3-month waitlist, admission is impossible. Kaylin was obviously using his connections on the hospital board to pull strings. I answered, that's great, sincerely pleased for my brother, even though our connection is complex. I'll be there. Wonderful. A little change in tone brought her voice into its typical critical level. And Lyra, it's a very upscale event. Perhaps we should go shopping for something appropriate. I noticed at Christmas your wardrobe is still very collegiate. I looked down at my well-tailored pants and luxury silk shirt, which had cost more than the rent for most people. My mother wouldn't be aware of it. I'll find something suitable, Mom. Don't worry. Well, if you're sure. There was no mistaking the skepticism in her voice. Saren works for some big technology company. Very impressive woman. Executive track. Everyone will be dressed to impress. I nearly laughed at the irony of her worry. Rather, I inhaled deeply. What technology company does she work for? Oh, something about health systems. Horizon something. I don't recall exactly. Kaylin says they're very important in their field. A beat skipped in my chest. Horizon Health Technologies. The business is now in negotiations to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase Nextech. There is no way that this is a coincidence. I tried to sound informal as I inquired, Mom, do you know Saren's last name? Winters. Saren Vale. Why do you ask? Winters, Saren. Although we hadn't heard of the company from our acquisition discussions, Horizon was enormous, employing thousands of people. The connection was unnerving, though. I hung up and contacted Kaya right away. I began the story by saying, you're not going to believe this. My brother is engaged to someone from Horizon. That's quite a coincidence, Kaya said thoughtfully. Do you think it'll complicate the acquisition? I don't know, I replied. But I need to find out who she is before that dinner. I found the answer with a short search on LinkedIn. Winters, Saren. Horizon Health Technologies Director of Strategic Acquisitions. She would undoubtedly be involved if not leading in the Nextech deal. And everyone would think I was an underemployed tech support worker when we sat across from each other at my brother's engagement dinner in a few weeks. The humor in the universe was perverted. As the supper drew nearer, my family's pressure mounted. About my outfit, my mother called me twice more. In a voicemail, my father reminded me to bring something noteworthy about my professional background to share with Saren's parents, who were, he stressed, extremely successful individuals. The most agonizing call I've ever gotten came a week prior to the meal. My mother said, Lyra, I need to discuss something delicate, in her lawyerly voice, which is never a good sign. Your father and I were talking with the Winters last night. They asked about you and, well, Kaylin mentioned you were between jobs. My stomach grew constricted. I'm not between jobs, Mom. Well, that little computer help desk position wasn't exactly something to highlight. Kaylin was just trying to smooth things over. The point is, Saren's father knows someone at Apple who might be hiring entry-level IT staff. Isn't that wonderful? We could finally get you on a proper career track. My work's casual disregard. the idea that I was in need of saving. In a rush of annoyance, I realized that no one was at all interested in what I had been constructing over the previous 5 years. Mom, I appreciate the thought, but I'm satisfied with my current position. I spoke in a tight, controlled voice. Don't be proud, Lyra. This is a real opportunity. We all have to start somewhere. I hung up and then called Nina, a buddy from my youth who had just returned to Chicago. In contrast to my family, Nina had consistently encouraged me to pursue my goals, even when she didn't quite comprehend them. She had developed into one of the few individuals who truly understood Next Tech throughout the years. Nina replied, "They set you up for a pity job interview," her voice growing indignant. "While you're in the middle of a $220 million acquisition deal. That's rich, even for your parents." The worst part is, I replied with a chuckle, the woman my brother is marrying is literally the person negotiating to buy my company. And no one in my family has any idea. Nina said, "So, what are you going to do at this dinner? Show up in jeans and a hoodie like they expect, or arrive in full CEO mode and watch their jaws drop?" I gave the question careful thought. Neither. I'm just going to be myself. No pretense. No big revelation. No games. Just dignity. Nina's eyebrows went up. That's very mature of you. 5 years of therapy will do that, I said, grinning a little. Besides, I'm done trying to prove anything to them. If they find out, they find out. I'm not going to hide, but I'm not going to perform either. Horizon made their last acquisition bid the evening before the dinner. $235 million, subject to terms that would keep Kaya and myself employed for a minimum of 3 years after the purchase. Officially, we were about to reach the $1 mark. I felt oddly at ease as I picked out a black outfit for the meal that was basic yet sophisticated. I now realized my value regardless of what transpired tomorrow night. I couldn't let anyone take that away. The Bluebird restaurant was as good as it looked. Glistening silver tables and banquettes with blue velvet are illuminated by crystal chandeliers. The city lights reflected in the dark surface of the Chicago River, which was visible from a wall of windows. I got there just in time, neither too late to make an entry nor too early to assist with the arrangements, as my mother had advised. Just like the businesswoman I was, on time and with dignity. My family had already assembled in a private dining room which the hostess showed me. My father was standing at the bar, engaged in a lively discussion with an elderly man who I thought was Mr. Winters. At the long table, my mother fiddled with place cards, shifting them around for the best possible social engineering. Kalen was the first to notice me. He walked across the room and embraced me with the effortless assurance of someone who had never doubted his position in the world. "Liv, you made it," he exclaimed. "Come meet Saren." Tall and graceful in a burgundy dress, she stood by the window with her dark hair styled in an excellent updo. Although we had never met in person, I recognized her right away from Horizon's executive page. Up until this point, our discussions had been conducted through middlemen. Kalen added, "Saren, this is my sister, Lyra," in that slightly pitying tone he often used when he introduced me to his successful pals. "It's so nice to finally meet you," Saren replied, holding out her hand sweetly. "Kalen talks about you all the time." I shook her hand and smiled, though I wasn't sure what he had said. "Congratulations on your engagement. I'm happy for you both." My mom showed up at my side. "Lyra, I see you found something to wear." "That's nice." The silence said a lot. "We've put you next to Cousin Margaret. You always got along with her." In other words, I was seated far away from the notable visitors. There were toasts and champagne before dinner started. First to speak, my father raised his glass to Saren and Kalen. To my son, who has made us proud every day of his life, he remarked in an emotional tone, and to Saren, a brilliant, accomplished woman worthy of him. We couldn't ask for a better addition to our family. Then came my mother's toast, a well-written speech that highlighted Kalen's accomplishments, from his first science fair win to his most recent appointment as chief resident. She ended by saying, "And now he's found a partner equally dedicated to excellence." To Kalen and Saren. As the glasses clinked, I saw Saren staring at me with a small wrinkle on her forehead, as though she was attempting to put me in a different context than Kalen's underachieving sister. The first course came. People were talking about me. With a whispered voice, as if inquiring about a terminal illness, Cousin Margaret leaned forward. "So, how's the job situation?" I only stated I work in health technology. Database management. It's strikingly subdued yet not false. She said, "Oh, that's nice," using the same tone my mother had previously. "Is there room for advancement in that field?" My uncle leaned across the table before I could respond. Lyra, Kaylin tells us you might have a lead on a position at Apple. That would be quite a step up for you. I sipped my water slowly. I'm actually quite satisfied with my current work. When my father heard, he joined in. Lyra, there's no shame in accepting help to get your foot in the door somewhere respectable. We all want to see you succeed. I could see Saren looking at me more carefully now from across the table. Her eyes were beginning to recognize. Lyra, she remarked, her voice piercing the background commotion during a pause in conversation. Forgive me, but is your last name Mitchell? There was silence at the table. Kaylin appeared perplexed. Of course it is. She's my sister. Saren's gaze expanded. You're Lyra Solon from Next Tech. And there it was. It was the day I had secretly looked forward to and feared for years. Yes, I replied plainly. With a slight clink against the delicate porcelain, Saren put down her fork. You're the founder? The co-founder, Lyra Solon, the one we're, she halted, abruptly conscious of the scene. Kaylin chuckled uneasily and said, Saren, I believe you're mistaking Lyra for someone else. My sister is either employed in tech assistance or something similar. Saren slowly answered, no, looking directly into my eyes. Your sister is the CEO and founder of NextTech, the healthcare communication platform that is transforming patient care nationwide. The business that my company is presently negotiating to buy for more than $220 million. There was complete quiet. My father's wine glass was halfway to his lips when he froze. My mother's hand flitted to her necklace of pearls. Kaylin's jaw dropped. Is this accurate? My father eventually succeeded. I slowly looked into his eyes. Yes. 6 years ago, Kaya Lyrian and I started Next Tech. We currently serve more than 300 healthcare facilities across the country and have over 70 employees. Why wouldn't you tell us, though? With a real expression of confusion, my mother asked. Saren interrupted me before I could respond, her polished professional demeanor giving way to enthusiasm. In the first year, Boston General's pharmaceutical errors were decreased by 62% because to your software. The way physicians retrieve patient data was completely transformed by the interface design. Your solution is light years ahead of what we've been trying to construct for years. We are prepared to pay such a high price because of this. My relatives looked at me like I was a stranger. They were in many respects. 200 million, my father said again in a tremulous voice. Saren gave a nod. The acquisition is set to close next week, pending final approval. She turned and smiled at me, a little embarrassed. It was unknown to me that you were Kaylin's sister. Our teams have been negotiating, and your company profile only says Lyra with no photo. I prefer to maintain a low profile, I replied. The century's understatement. The remainder of the meal was a haze of startled inquiries and uncomfortable disclosures. Just an hour before, my relatives had matched me against Kaylin, and now they wanted investing advice. My mother said 3 times that she had always recognized my unique computing skills. According to my father, he had been sharing stories about his daughter, the IT entrepreneur, with his co-workers for years. Only Kaylin was comparatively silent, contemplating the news that his struggling little sister was about to sell her business for a price that eclipsed his whole anticipated lifetime income as a doctor. I remained composed the entire time, calmly responding to inquiries, but without the intense desire for acceptance that had once characterized a large portion of my existence. The sudden, opportunistic pride of others who had never seen me clearly drowned out the approval I had so desperately sought. Saren grabbed me aside as the evening came to an end. I apologize if I caused any awkwardness. I was just astonished. I grinned sincerely. Avoid apologizing. It has taken a while to happen. After hesitating, she said softly. For what it's worth, your reputation in the industry is extraordinary. As we said our goodbyes, Saren had remarked, people call you the ghost genius. Now I understand why you kept such a low profile. My mother held on to my arm as I left the restaurant. Lyra, we must speak soon. Talk politely. Almost anything. I nodded with calm conviction rather than fear. We will. I felt lighter as I walked to my car because the secret I had kept for years was now out in the open, and I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that I had constructed it. I hadn't even reached home when the first text came in. Mom, tomorrow is brunch at the Drake Hotel at 11. We need to chat. My phone was overloaded by dawn. Suddenly, family members recalled how they had always encouraged my computer interest. My long-lost cousins wanted to know about investment opportunities. Each of Kaylin's 3 messages, which culminated in a single line, was increasingly perplexing. Kaylin, what kept you from telling me? I solely responded to my parents. Some discussions had to take place in person. The Drake's dining room was tasteful and understated, making it ideal for the challenging conversation that lay ahead. When I got there, my parents were already seated and immaculately dressed, as if they were attending a business conference instead of having brunch with their daughter. My father stood hesitantly and said, "Lyra," torn between his customary cliched greeting and anything more appropriate for a daughter he had just learned was incredibly successful. He decided on a clumsy embrace. "You look well." My mom wasn't as controlled. "We have a lot to talk about, darling. This morning I read all I could find about Next Tech. The user growth figures, fundraising rounds, and innovation awards. Why would you withhold this information from us? We are your family." I inhaled deeply. "I think you know why." My father snapped, "I certainly don't," adding, "We've always supported your pursuits." The waiter brought coffee, which gave me time to gather my thoughts. When he was gone, I turned to face them. "My interest in technology was never taken seriously by you. Whenever I attempted to share my work, it was written off as a pastime. Before I obtained a genuine job, I needed to get something out of my system. It became simpler to give up after a while." My mother objected, saying that's unfair. "We only wanted what was best for you." The IT industry appeared to be very unpredictable. "What you wanted," I continued softly, "was for me to go down a path you recognized and authorized. You viewed my decision as failure when I made a different one." My dad leaned over. "Lyra, we always saw your potential. All we were doing was encouraging you to do well." "No," I responded, maintaining a steady tone. "You were pressuring me to fit in. There is a distinction." He shrugged and remarked, "Well, obviously it worked out. Look what you've done. Perhaps our encouragement inspired you." The precise reaction I had feared was there. Rewriting history to portray themselves as encouraging mentors instead of the contemptuous doubters they had previously been. "Dad, do you recall urging me 5 years ago at Thanksgiving to find a real job? Or implying that since my own work wasn't viable, I should accept an administrative post at Kaylin's hospital? Mom, do you remember arranging a pity interview for me last week?" My mother was gracious enough to display embarrassment. Her words, "We were concerned. You never shared any details about your work. How were we supposed to know? You could have asked." Really asked. With interest. Not just waited for an answer that confirmed what you already believed. Through mimosas and eggs Benedict, painful but necessary, the conversation went on. My mother wavered between being defensive and making an effort to make amends. As usual, my father attempted to uphold his dominance by implying that he had always seen my hidden potential. My mother sought to validate me by saying, "Your brother always spoke highly of your intelligence," as though Kaylin's endorsement could be applied retroactively. I said, "I know you both love me at last. But love without respect or understanding isn't enough. I needed you to see me for who I actually was, not who you wanted me to be." With preliminary plans for supper the following week, we said our goodbyes. It wasn't a movie's cathartic ending, but genuine healing is rarely that way. That night, Kaylin unexpectedly arrived at my apartment. He held up an expensive bottle of Cabernet and stated, "I brought wine," in an embarrassing manner. Figured we might need it. Startled by the gesture, I opened the door for him. He stopped just inside to look around, at the simple architecture, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the warm light bouncing off the distant lake. A far cry from the difficult life Dad had always envisioned for me. "Nice place," Kaylin remarked, surveying the area. "Really nice. Thanks." With wine glasses in hand and the Chicago skyline sparkling outside the windows, we took our seats in my living room. "So," he started, "I've been a jerk." The directness made me laugh out loud. "Not entirely." Insisting, "No, I bought into this whole narrative about you, struggling, being lost, or whatever. I never really asked you about your work. Like, actually asked." "No, you didn't." He thoughtfully swirled his wine. "I think I liked being the successful one. The one who made Mom and Dad proud. It was comfortable." I was disarmed by his candor. I had anticipated justifications or the same historical revisionism our parents had attempted. "For what it's worth," he went on, "I'm sorry. And I'm really impressed by what you've built. Saren hasn't stopped talking about your platform. Apparently, you're some kind of genius." "I just built something I believed in," I replied. "Something that actually helps people." Then he nodded and said, "Like what I try to do as a doctor, just on a much larger scale, apparently." We spoke for hours. Perhaps for the first time as adults, they actually spoke. He posed sincere queries regarding Next Tech and the difficulties of starting a business from scratch. I inquired about his medical work, And when his responses weren't framed as proof of superiority, I found myself genuinely interested in them. He stopped at the door on his way out. "Saren really likes you. She was mortified about outing you at dinner, but she's hoping you two might become friends, especially if you'll be working together after the acquisition." I said I'd like that and was shocked to see that I meant it. As the acquisition progressed toward completion in the ensuing weeks, my family relationships took a new turn. My parents alternated between sincere attempts to comprehend my work and automatic reactions brought on by decades of viewing me through a limited perspective. My father tried to give me business advice during some awkward lunches. Despite my CEO's schedule, I had awkward phone conversations with my mother asking if I was eating healthily. However, there were times when they truly connected. My father listened carefully as I described the features of Nextech's platform and asked to see it. Although my mother acknowledged that she had never fully grasped technology, she was pleased of the things I had created. Little steps. Significant ones. Saren's contribution to bridging the gap between my worlds was the most surprising development. She had a distinct viewpoint on Mitchell family dynamics as my future sister-in-law and co-worker. "Your parents are trying," she said to me one afternoon when we were having coffee. "They just don't have the vocabulary for this version of success. They're learning a new language," I noticed. She grinned. "I grew up with parents who measured worth by degrees and titles. It took me years to realize there are many paths to a meaningful life. Maybe I can help translate a bit." She also did, teaching my family about the tech sector in a gentle manner, putting my accomplishments in a comprehensible context, giving them a much-needed reality check every now and again when they start acting in the same way. Even though she didn't always succeed, her efforts made the adjustment to our new world easier. Kaya and I became overnight centimillionaires when the deal closed on time. In addition to our complete names, the press release featured our official pictures, which was my first public recognition as a co-founder of Nextech. At last, the spectral genius was emerging into the spotlight. Life had settled into a new rhythm 6 months after my brother's engagement dinner. The purchase was finalized. At Horizon Health Technologies, I was now in charge of the innovation section. Kaya was in charge of international expansion, and our platform was being used in hospitals on 3 continents. The Chicago River, whose waters reflected the changing seasons, was visible from my office. As I finished a conference call with our development team in Singapore today, spring sunlight glinted off its surface. My screen was illuminated by a text from Saren. "Saren, don't forget that tonight is dinner at your house. I'll bring the wine you enjoyed." I grinned, not only at the writing, but at the life I had quietly, purposefully, and unrepentantly created. Not for approval, not for cheers, but because I was at last aware of who I was. And it was sufficient. Kalen says he's making dessert, so expect emergency cupcakes from the bakery when he inevitably burns something. I grinned. A year ago, I could not have imagined that our informal family dinners would become a monthly ritual. My parents occasionally participated. There were moments when we were the only 3. However, I genuinely valued the easy friendship that had grown between Saren, Kalen, and me. Our bond had grown faster while working with Saren. Her uncomplicated professional style was similar to mine, and her understanding of my family's dynamics was quite helpful. She recognized the insecurities underlying my parents' domineering tendencies, which helped her understand them in ways I occasionally couldn't. She once said, "Your dad didn't write off your tech career because he thought you'd fail. He dismissed it because he didn't understand it." And Richard Mitchell hates not understanding things. The most significant change had been in my relationship with Kalen. We found common ground without the hierarchy of a suffering sister and a successful doctor. We were both ambitious, meticulous perfectionists who genuinely wanted to make healthcare better. Instead of passing judgment, we now exchanged ideas. My folks were making an effort. That's the best way to describe it. We had set new limits. My father made an obvious attempt to inquire about my job without making suggestions for changes right away, and my mother stopped giving me unsolicited comments on my wardrobe. Our weekly Sunday calls were now real talks rather than evasive drills. Real ones, but not always simple ones. In fact, my mom had been to Nextech's offices. When staff members welcomed me with obvious respect, her initial hesitation gave way to genuine pride. The healing was not limited to the outside. I was able to prioritize my personal health in ways I had not been able to throughout the startup grind thanks to the purchase. I was able to work through the complicated feelings surrounding my family's unexpected acknowledgement with the support of Dr. Elin regular therapy sessions. She once remarked, "You spent years protecting yourself from their judgment, Now that protection isn't necessary in the same way, but the habits remain. It's okay to let some of those walls down gradually. I had to. Not only with family but also in creating a wider network of support. My oldest and most reliable buddy is still Nina. However, through industry events, retreats, and mentoring programs, I had also made connections with other female entrepreneurs. A chosen family of people who understood my job and my journey had replaced the loneliness that had formerly characterized my early career. Being a mentor to young women in technology was one special source of happiness. Every month, I conducted workshops for high school females who were interested in STEM, imparting not only technical knowledge but also the mental fortitude required to follow unorthodox career pathways. One 15-year-old revealed, "My parents think computer science is just a hobby," which echoed my own experience. "They want me to become a lawyer like my mom." I said, "What do you want?" She said, "To build things that matter without pretension." "Then build them," I said, providing her with encouragement and resources. Find the people who believe in your vision, even if they're not your family. And keep the door open. They might understand later. As I prepared the table for Kaylin and Saren's dinner that night, I took stock of my progress. My long-sought external validation had come in spades: financial stability, industry recognition, and even recognition from family. However, I had discovered something more worthwhile: the capacity for self-validation. Kaylin was the first to come with the anticipated backup cupcakes from the bakery, as well as a homemade chocolate cake that was surprisingly tasty. I hedged my bets, he laughed and said. "But I'm getting better." Only set off the smoke alarm once this time. After that, Saren brought wine and updates on their impending nuptials. We spoke about everything from work to wedding planning to family rumors as we sat around my dining table. Kaylin stated, "Mom is actually reading books about technology startups. I found tech founders under 30 on her nightstand last week." I answered, "Better late than never," without resentment. Later, Saren asked me a question that surprised me as we were in the living room having coffee and dessert. "Do you ever wish things had been different? That your family had recognized your potential from the beginning?" I gave it a lot of thought before responding. Of course. Sometimes it would have been easier, less painful. But I'm not sure I would have built the same resilience or clarity of purpose. I learned to believe in myself when no one else did. That's a powerful foundation. After giving a nod, Kaylin added, "Now more self-aware. If Mom and Dad had been fawning over your tech career, I might have grown up even more insufferable than I was." The sound of our laughter drifted over the shimmering city lights, genuine and light. The trip wasn't finished yet. Family ties change throughout time and are never really fixed. There would be more challenging discussions and more instances where ingrained behaviors attempted to reappear. However, a fundamental change had occurred. I was able to see my value on my own without the help of my family. And something better had been made possible by that freedom, that silent, unwavering freedom. Acceptance without a sense of urgency. Not forgetting but forgiving. A bond based on who we were becoming rather than who we had been. Recognition is not a measure of success. Impact is used to measure it. And by that criterion, Nextech had surpassed my expectations, enhancing patient outcomes, changing the way that healthcare is communicated, and creating something that had real significance. I've always known it could. And regardless of who agreed, I had managed to live a life that was true to my vision and principles. Perhaps the most important lesson regarding family, both the one we choose and the one we are born into, was this: when we bring our complete, genuine selves to relationships, they can change. Not everyone will applaud your journey, but gradually, those who are worth maintaining in your life will come to understand you. Even though the journey had been difficult, I was incredibly grateful for it when I looked out of my office window the following day and saw the city. The way ahead wasn't entirely obvious. However, I was doing it my way, generating success according to my own standards. And that was the true accomplishment, more than any acquisition or long overdue family approval. Tell me about a moment when you had to believe in yourself when no one else did. If my story struck a chord with you today, share your experience by leaving a comment below. And if you know someone who should hear this affirmation, please show them this video. For more stories on pursuing your own path, even if it deviates from what others anticipate, don't forget to subscribe. I appreciate you listening to my story. Additionally, keep in mind, the goal of true achievement is not to disprove others. It's about establishing your correctness. The problem with retribution is that it's not always obvious or spectacular. quiet achievement, tranquility, and becoming everything they said you couldn't be might sometimes be the most effective answer. I hope you choose healing if betrayal or family strife is causing you anguish. Establish limits, develop quietly, and let your life to speak for itself. That freedom is what you deserve. If this story resonated with you, please share your tale in the comments section. Your voice may be just what someone else needs to hear. Have you ever recovered from something that had previously broken you? Let's discuss it below.